I think one of the biggest lies students are taught is that spending more time with a book means more learning. Because honest, most of us have experienced this in our life. You sit with a chapter for hours, you underline important lines, you reread the same paragraph again and again, and by the end of the day, it feels like you studied, but then someone asks you to explain this topic in simple words, and suddenly your brain goes blank. I used to study like this all the time. I thought if I kept rereading my notes enough times, eventually everything would stay in my head. But most of the information disappeared after a few days. And the frustrating part was that I genuinely worked hard. And then I came across something called the Feynman technique. Its name It is named after Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize winning physicist who was known not just for being intelligent but for explaining extremely complex ideas in a way almost anyone could understand. And he had this simple core idea that if you can't explain something simply, you don't really understand it yet. And that line stayed with me for a long time because most of us studied in a very passive way. We read, we highlight, we memorize definitions, but we rarely stop and ask ourselves, can I actually explain this clearly? And that's where the Feynman technique becomes powerful. The method, the method itself is surprisingly simple. First, you choose a topic. It could be anything, a biology chapter, a math concept, a grammar rule, and reading comprehension, literally anything you are trying to learn. And then, after studying it for a while, you close the book. Now comes the important. You try to explain the concept in the simplest language possible, like you are teaching it to someone who knows absolutely nothing about the topic. Maybe a child, maybe, even an imaginary audience. The goal here is not to sound smart by using jargons and complex words, but to give the audience the clarity they needed. Because the moment you start explaining, something interesting happens. You suddenly notice the weak areas in your understanding. There will be moments when you there will be moments when your explanation stops or breaks. You will have pause in the middle of a sentence. And this moment is important because this reveals exactly what you still don't understand. Most people ignore confusion and keep moving forward, but this method forces you to face it directly. So when you find those gaps, you go back to the source material, you relearn that specific part carefully, and then come again and simplify it over and over until the explanation starts feeling natural. And I think that's the point where learning becomes real and active. For example, think about this. A lot of us memorize complicated definitions just to reproduce them in exams, but someone who truly understands the concept can usually explain it in one simple sentence. And weirdly enough, and I think this method also changes the way you see study. It stopped becoming a process of collecting information and start becoming a process of building understanding. So now whenever you study something new, don't try to ask how many times did I read this. So you can ask yourself, can I explain this simply? Thank you for watching my video. I'll see you in the next one.